Hello, editing Sophie here. I just want to say there were some audio issues with this episode. Like, apparently you could only hear my mic in one side of the ear, and like then I switched mics in between, and then one was louder than the other. So I just turned everything to mono, added a compressor. But if it still sounds weird, I'm sorry. And the next episode will be better because we know what we did wrong. So yeah, let's go back to the episode. Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the second episode of the Øutsiders podcast. I didn't write an introduction. Oh well.
I did.
First things, did you? Go on then.
Well,
or do you want me to read it? I don't.
I wanted you to read it. Whatever.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, well, I think before we do anything else, we should mention that Sophie is here this week.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't able to join us last week, but she is here. So,
oh my god.
Sophie, hello. Want to introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, I meant to look for the clap thing, but it was like too fast. Sorry.
Sophie, do you want to introduce yourself?
What do you want me to say?
You could say, see, I wrote out a list of things for you to say about yourself and then just never shared it with you. Just say your Twitter name and then your favorite things about being a fan.
Okay. My Twitter name is Joe with you, and my favorite things about being a fan are Connie and Ofri.
Okay, now say like the first letter of your name and an animal that starts with that letter.
Okay, it's S and a snake.
Great.
What's that saying about you?
Oh,
Hmm.
Don't applaud that.
Anyway, so yeah, in this episode, the plan is to go over just like general reoccurring themes throughout like the whole discography. So me and Ofri have been going through like the songs and listening to them and categorizing them into what kind of like themes there are on like a very basic level. Like we're not going into anything too particular yet.
Mm-hmm.
But
I feel like
the reason that go on.
Okay, I feel like Connie and I talked about this. Like the things that we want to talk about the most are the things that are going to take the longest, or the things that are going to take the most research. So it's been 5 days since last episode. We're just like slowly diving into it, and like, but this episode is still gonna be interesting because I've been like obsessed with the concept of like recurring themes and like songs that are somehow linked to one another for a while now. So it's gonna be fun.
Mm-hmm. And then you get like lyric parallels and all that kind of thing. So that'll be interesting if we come across any of those.
Yeah, like obviously there's the obvious ones, right? There's the Levitate one, the reference to car radio.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I'm sure each one of us like remembers where they were when they first heard that.
Yeah.
That's so good. There's the Lane Boy reference to Ride, right? Who would you live and die for on that list? And I think there are more subtle ones that we're gonna get into.
Yeah, honestly, there's so many, and it's like even niche ones that you wouldn't necessarily think about unless you're looking at the bigger picture. And speaking of the bigger picture, essentially, like the whole point in us choosing to talk about this topic is because it's like every little part of the lore is made up of puzzle pieces that kind of form this overall story. But it's not just about a fictional story. It's about the real life correlations and everything. So it essentially comes down to analyzing and understanding what the actual songs are trying to convey through the lyrics. So that's our kind of goal for today, is to try and educate or just go over the general basics of what's being said in the songs before you like go into the whole like characters and plot lines and all of that stuff.
Yeah, obviously the music and the lyrics is like the center of this entire story, and everything else is just built off of that or is inspired off of that.
And it's a lot of it is up to like interpretation and how each individual person sees it. But there's some themes that we can't ignore because no matter what, they are there and they are being expressed throughout the whole discography. So we're gonna go through what we think is the most important to mention, kind of like prioritizing the themes that are undoubtedly big points that are being made.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where to go next, to be honest. Do we start the PowerPoint yet?
We could start the PowerPoint. We could like briefly mention all of the themes that we wanted to discuss.
Okay. So
Oh.
if we start with just talking about what themes are there,
Mm-hmm.
we could just list them in like a basic way. So obviously we've got the first one is about struggle, battle, war, general opposition of sides and
Mm-hmm.
struggling with that.
I mean, the idea of
Which-
splitting yourself is one that has been like apparent since the beginning, and is such a huge part of it's such a huge part of what Blurryface became later on, and
Yeah.
what the story became, because it started with splitting yourself up to two parts and two pieces, right? There's the good and the bad, and it's like black and white, right? But then he realized, like Tyler probably realized, that there's a little bit of a gray area in between those two like extremes, so we get more specific and get more like deeply into it.
Yeah, and then there's obviously the whole being split into two parts then goes on to like other topics. So there's the good side and the bad side. There's obviously we'll get onto the whole opposing forces thing, but it's like every kind of theme links to one another in some way. So the division could be the two sides. It could be banditos versus the bishops, or it could be like obviously what that represents. So the good side of a person's brain and the bad side of a person's brain, which is represented by question mark, whatever Tyler would consider his good side, I guess just Tyler, and Blurryface.
I mean, yeah. I don't. The thing
Although
is,
they're all
that's the
parts
thing
of
that like I tried to understand also while we were working on this episode and making the presentation and everything, because there were obviously theories about Clancy being supposedly like the good side, right?
Yeah.
Or at least like describing, like representing hope in this story. But they're really, because Tyler has both of these like parts, the good and the bad, there's really no like representation of like pure good that we can see. Or maybe it's just not that obvious. Maybe Clancy is that representation. We're not sure yet.
Yeah, because I think the idea of good it's not necessarily this is the good side, this is the bad side. There's an obvious bad side, and then there's another voice that's questioning whether that bad side is really good.
Yeah, I feel like the good side also comes from like hope, right? When you get the hope 100%. That you need, and like when like in the music videos when he sees Josh, right, or the Banditos, or when there's like a communal group of people.
The bad side essentially has all the power, and it's more about questioning that bad side and whether it's, because obviously in Dema then we have the other theme of like control and submission and like obviously dictatorship, but all that kind of stuff that feeds into each other. And it's this idea of feeling controlled by the bad things and not knowing whether you should submit to them or whether you should try and fight it.
Yeah.
Fight it, take the pain, ignite it.
I was actually thinking about polarize, like polarize is taking your disguises, separating them, spilling up wrong right way.
Yeah,
it's deciding where to die and deciding where to fight. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
about.
Exactly. It's about making a conscious decision to not believe what you believe or question what you believe, and that goes into Tyler's own religious conflict, which is another thing. I don't think we've explicitly written that out as a theme, but we've definitely made themes that feeds into.
Yeah, I mean, we can look at it in a religious context and in a non-religion context as well.
Exactly, because it works that way. And then the religion side of things also links to the crime thing and the whole
I feel
good
like
versus bad.
When you bring religion into it, like Tyler always talks about grace, or like abusing grace, right? I think he talks about abusing grace in Ode to Sleep. Or like, I think that he thinks that he's not good enough, right? Or that he... that there's this like this other side that's really good and really pure, and that he's trying to get to that, but he's not sure that he's worthy or good enough.
Yeah, exactly, because obviously religion is made out to be this thing that has a specific set of rules that you have to follow, and then if you break one of those rules, then you're not pure, or you're committing a sin or a crime.
I
But
mean,
obviously Tyler's individual.
there's also the concept of like uh, God forgiving you for all of your sins and like redemption, right? And
Yeah, exactly.
being better. So that definitely ties into the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that Tyler's own personal experience with that, like his specific experience with religious conflict, that's not something we can analyze because we'll never know how
definitely.
he feels about that. But we can definitely recognize when he's talking about it or when he's referencing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we've gone over a fair few of the themes, and I think we can start to go into more detail about them now.
All right. I'll open
I
up.
don't know how to make this bigger screen.
Hold on. I'm still not used to this.
It's okay.
It's like watching your granny use a computer for the first
time. When did we put Sophie on this podcast? I thought it was just me and Connie.
Ah. You're not kidding.
I'm not kidding. All right. So, yeah, I guess we'll go to the first slide. I just like put in like a picture.
We've done that. We've done that slide. We just talked about that.
We've done that slide for sure. All right, I made the slide, so I guess I can talk a little bit about that because it makes the most sense to begin with the most obvious what we just talked about, like two opposing forces. The thing that comes up the most, where Blurryface stemmed from, where the lore stemmed from, and like I said, it begins with this like almost like vague, simple concept of good and evil, and then it becomes more specific and it becomes more complicated. Blurryface isn't just a representation of just all the bad and the evil. Tyler also talked about his insecurities and like everything that he doesn't like about himself, everything that society like tries to enforce on him, or things like that, just being personified into a single person.
You're caressing his face.
Oh my god, I was okay until you said that. I did not notice. I didn't even notice. I was totally caressing his face. I was like I forgot that you can like see my cursor too. I completely forgot.
So funny. Oh my god. But yeah, I mean, what you said about like the two opposing forces and the good and the bad, it's not always that clear either. So for example, light and dark, you'd think, okay, so dark is bad, light is good, but light isn't always good because light also represents neon, which has connotations of death. And
I mean, a really good example of this is Scaled and Icy, because they took everything that we knew about good and bad and tried to,
and they flipped it. They tried to use it to their advantage. They made propaganda. So it gets foggy with the two different sides. It sort of brings in an element of strategy, like one side trying to take over the other side, and it makes it also like blurs the line of trust, because I feel like there's a lot of mention in like the journals, especially Clancy's journals, about not knowing what to believe or not knowing what's right and what's wrong, or if he's in the right place or if he's in the wrong place. So when the sides start to kind of cross over and use one another, that sounds so vague. I mean, when the bad starts to try and put on this false image of being good, it's easy to be manipulated by that.
Exactly. I feel like Keon's is a great example of that. I mean, I don't know if we're gonna get into that today, but yeah, Keon's being the supposedly good bishop, or being the comforting bishop, or the bishop that isn't as ruthless as other bishops may be, like Nico. It is a part of like sort of a manipulation tactic.
100%. Yeah, it's gaslighting essentially. Like if they paint Dema as this sunny, bright, happy place full of color, we already know that it's not. We know that's not what it's like. Clancy knows that's not what it's like. He's been there. He's out of there, at least in the first letter. But it's almost like they're trying to gaslight everything you already know and flip it to make you think that it's where you're supposed to be.
Another very big theme that we're going to talk about is disguise, right?
Mhm.
That's been mentioned in songs a lot in many different contexts, and the main like gist of it is that we always like we put on some sort of disguise to hide the bad parts of ourselves. Tyler, like, he talks about having multiple faces sometimes.
Yeah.
And like in Clear, there's a line that he says, "I'll take my face off at the door because I don't know who they will take me for."
Yeah,
And
exactly.
before you start your day, like, put on the glitter that your soul hides behind.
Yeah, it's all about kind of hiding who you really are to fit into a certain
Yeah,
demographic and expectation.
exactly. And there are like in songs, there are like a few times where he mentions like not even knowing that if he wants, like, he thinks that his bad sides are so bad that he doesn't want anyone else to see them.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And especially in Before You Start Your Day, because he's essentially talking about hiding his own actual struggles, which obviously that doesn't help. The best thing to do when it comes to struggles is to to find sanctuary in other people. And that's another big thing is,
Oh my god, a
obviously the
huge thing.
banditos.
Calling for help, right? I mean, the whole
Yeah.
song Trees, I feel like, is a great representation of that. We don't even have to get into it. I feel like,
Yeah. Even like the
yeah.
simplicity of the lyrics there, it's just on like a very basic level, like, just like, I don't even know how to describe it.
I mean, just him calling for help. And
Yeah,
not even necessarily
in such like a
receiving that help,
simple,
but just
uncomplicated way.
Yeah.
It's just very matter of fact. It doesn't go into like the kind of complex, introspective way of expressing his thoughts like he does in the other songs. It is such like a simple lexis in the lyrics. Like he's just trying to get across the basic point of the call for help, I guess.
And the colors that I put in here, I mean, they look like the regional best colors, the version of the red and the light blue. I mean, I think that it's safe to assume at this point that they were representing the good and the bad side.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and
do you consider blue to be a good color?
Absolutely. And we could get into that. I feel like when we get into color theory, then we could like grab examples from like music videos and visuals and logos.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting because of the whole blue is a sign of defeat.
Oh, well, that's the thing. You know who said that? Blurryface.
Oh,
Blue
right,
is a
yeah, I
sign
was
of
forgetting
defeat.
that.
Blue is defeating Blurryface. That's where
Yeah,
I stand
okay.
on that.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
forgot about that. Yeah.
when Keon's died, like the fire, they actively like made the fire blue.
Yeah, okay.
And then the Dema towers were blue as well. I mean, we can get into that, but that's what I think.
Apparently the audio keeps cutting out.
My old audio?
No, just in general.
Okay. Sorry.
Apparently it's nothing too bad, but it's happening, so we should be aware. I'm not sure how to check it though, so I'll just hope that it's okay.
I will watch it on my phone and I will let you know.
Okay.
So I put Tyler in the yellow box because I think that Tyler is somewhere in between. That's what Trench was really. I mean, yellow really symbolized like being in between two places, right?
So, yeah.
Yeah, that was just...
Yeah, I'm starting to think about things to do with color theory now, but I feel like that's a different topic.
Yeah, that's a different topic. But definitely all the topics relate to one another. So we're just going to have to get into that later on.
Yeah.
Can someone look at the chat and like make sure that we're sounding okay? Because we might need to like put on the be right back screen and like fix whatever's wrong.
Well, Sophie said she was going to try listening to it on her phone.
Okay. So
yeah. So far it's fine, But I'll keep
Okay.
watching it.
All
All
right.
right. Should we move on from two opposing forces?
Yeah.
Should we
All
move
right.
on to the first opposing force?
Good and evil. I actually have visuals for that, but first, Connie, you can read off of the presentation.
Okay. So it's not loaded for me yet, but
Oh.
yeah. So
Oh my
we've got
god, you're watching the stream. I was supposed to be screen sharing. That's my bad.
yeah, it's fine
Okay.
because I have it open as well.
Okay.
But yeah, so when it comes to good and evil, obviously we've discussed that there's multiple different contrasting pair themes, but I'd say that the general basic idea of like a good side and a bad side is the main one that we have. So obviously from the start, when we first start to see the law be described in around Blurryface era, we learn about Blurryface himself, and he's painted as the main villain.
Mm-hmm.
But as we progress through the story, we get more complex sides. So there's no longer just Blurryface, there's 9 bishops, and there's no longer just Tyler. There's a whole army of banditos and all the other questions around who is on the banditos side, you know, the torchbearer,
Yeah.
who's Clancy, all that kind of stuff. It becomes more than just a good guy and a bad guy. So it also relates to like the clouded idealization of what is right and wrong. So not knowing necessarily what's right or what's wrong. You know, it might be obvious to an outsider's perspective. So like to us, if we're watching these music videos and we think, okay, so the red cloaked guys are obviously the bad ones, but you don't realize that the characters, so like the citizens of Dema, can't necessarily see what they're being put through and all that kind of stuff. It's the kind of clouded perspective.
And that's what makes it more realistic and more like actual life, because actual life is really confusing. And a lot of the times people, like Tyler says in Choker, self-sabotage is sweet romance. I had to like look for that in my brain.
Yeah.
Like people are self-destructive, and a lot of the times you can find comfort in something that is bad for you.
Yeah,
So,
right and wrong is a spectrum. It's not black and white. It's there's different levels to it, and sometimes you just don't know where you stand with it. It really depends on the situation, but obviously mental health makes it difficult to see the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, if the bad side is manipulating you, then, and by the bad side manipulating you, that means obviously if your negative thoughts are controlling you, then you don't know that they're wrong. So, for example, if we look at Doubt, when he says shaking hands with the dark parts of my thoughts, he's essentially collaborating with negative thoughts. He's kind of listening to them. It doesn't necessarily say whether he agrees or whether he's listening to the bad things. It just means that he's aware of them and he's kind of coexisting.
Yeah, it's almost like he's becoming friends with that person.
Yeah. He's kind of finding comfort in what he's used to having in his brain because he can't get rid of it. He just has to learn to find other ways around it, you know? And I think that's a lot to do with the kind of journey of mental health that's obviously conveyed through Dema and all the lore and just all the story in general, is that you can't just wave a magic wand and make it go away. It might be there for the rest of your life. You just have to find ways to exist with it and around it, you know?
Mm-hmm. I feel like we should go more into more examples. In songs. Okay. I had some written down in here as well.
I think when it comes to good and evil, the most obvious one is Isle of Flightless Birds. Just as a song in general, it's got multiple lyrics that link to good and evil. But it directly says, your soul knows good and evil, your soul knows both sides. It's time to pick your battle, and I promise you this is mine. Yeah, so again, about picking your battle, about making a conscious decision. And about knowing both those sides.
Yeah, I mean, he starts off the song by talking about demons and angels. Mm-hmm. And like, I feel like Isle of Free, I can hear you only on one side of my headphones now.
Oh.
We're having technical issues.
Oh dear.
Anyway, Connie, keep talking.
Okay. Well, yeah, like the whole thing about demons and angels flying around. It's to be fair, I've never thought about that lyric in too much depth. But I think it also links to like the theme of flying and being above, demons and angels, good and bad,
Oh yeah, definitely.
being something to look up to. But that includes the demons. Like you wouldn't normally expect someone to describe them being on the same level as one another, But he's essentially talking about the bad side and the good side as being something that are equally as kind of just equal. I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like I'll need to look at the lyrics, and right now I'm focused on the audio thing. But I
That's okay.
agree
I
with what
am
you're
looking at
saying.
them.
Okay, so
But yeah, it's
no, continue.
okay. I was just gonna say the whole thing about being a flightless bird, being grounded, not really not being it kind of links to freedom, having a lack of freedom, being on this kind of ground level. So when he describes demons and angels as flying around, when you think about the demons like as the bishops, as some kind of superior force, it gives like a hierarchy to all these inner conflicts.
We are talking about Isle of Flightless Birds here, so the concept of the bishops was still forming.
Yeah, no, I know. I didn't mean it as the bishops. I meant what they represent. So like the struggles they represent.
And it's also possible that that song, he was talking about demons and angels, literally in a religious context, right? Heaven and hell. He also literally talks about heaven and hell, like for example in The Judge. Where he talks about that's one of my favorite lines actually. I know my soul's freezing, hell's hot for a good reason.
Yeah, God, yeah.
Which brings us to the hot and cold thing. God, we have so many themes that are just like contrasting opposites. And I think that's so interesting the way Tyler writes songs and the way he's using these metaphors.
So what do you think about the when he says my soul's freezing, what do you think he means by that?
He's talking about being cold, like in Isle of Flightless Birds, right? When he feels that he's closer to death, when he feels that he's doing worse mentally.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
He thinks that he's his soul is colder. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to fix the mic.
It was doing that before, I think, but then it stopped for the whole of the first episode. But again, with the freezing and the hot and cold theme, I feel like we can just talk about them out of order, it's fine. But when he says my soul's freezing, when you think about it, like it links to the whole religious concept thing, because obviously with the hell's hot for a good reason, but I mean the fact that suicide is considered a sin. So when he's feeling that like horrible way and obviously suicidal, and close to death emotionally, that's considered to be sinning. That's considered to be a crime. And that's essentially why he's saying, like, obviously hell's hot for a good reason. Like there's no place in heaven for someone who's thinking those thoughts, like it's considered impure or whatever it is. So definitely that song is definitely a lot of religious conflict in it.
Oh, definitely. It's called The Judge.
Well,
definitely.
Good song.
I'll need you guys to tell me if my mic is better because I switched to a different mic. But we have...
It sounds fine.
Yeah, it sounds all right.
Yeah, there's this comment that says, they fly around while we are walking and mold our emotions just to please them. Kind of makes me feel like it's about humans being inherently neutral beings that are influenced by things higher than them or out of their control. I completely agree with this. I also talked to Connie about how, again, we're just like going through all of the themes right now, but the theme of sleep, right? It can represent death, but it can also represent like a state of unawareness. We really see that in the Clancy letters when he says they are asleep. They're so sure that they know the truth and carry on throughout their day with the same meaningless tasks. They've forgotten to look up and to look outward. like that really reminds me of Isle of Flightless Birds as well, and like the notion that we're just we're so influenced by so many things, but we're not taking the time to really think about what's wrong.
Yeah,
we're just like
100%.
trying to hide from that.
Yeah. I also think that the good and evil ties into the light and dark. It's not necessarily black and white in the same way. I mean, we already discussed how good and evil is a spectrum, but light and dark is more difficult. It's less of a spectrum. It's more about symbolism, what it represents for something to be bright and light, and what.
Like, I always thought that before the bishops were mentioned as the bishops, which they really are not. Like, they are mentioned in like Tao and stuff, but not many times. But before they became the actual bishops, Tyler was either referring to them as voices, as demons, or as shadows. And shadows really ties into the whole dark thing. I mean, when we go back to Hometown, and he says, "My hometown's in the dark." A shadow tilts its head at me. Head at me. I feel like that. Also, redecorate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Orders from
he
the
literally
corner.
says, "Spirits in the dark are waiting." Spirits in the dark.
Yeah. Spirits in the dark.
Mm-hmm. You're saying redecorate?
Yeah, redecorate. Orders from that corner where the shadow always lived, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's really, that's just another way of him to describe the bishops, I think. And because they're not, the world of Dema is just a representation for everything that's going on in Tyler's head. So the bishops can be many things. They're just, when you look at what they really are, they're the bad thoughts, bad voices. There are things that we can't necessarily see. So he can make them wear all types of like different masks and different faces.
Should we have moved on to the second slide?
Probably.
I'll just start to go on. I'll describe what we've written about it first. So
okay. Do you guys like the visuals? Do I switch on to the next visuals, or do you want to go back to the slides?
You don't need to go to the slide. It's fine. I can just read out what's there.
Okay, so if I have a visual, I'll put the visuals on, and if I don't, then we'll go back to the slides.
Okay. So for light and dark, obviously, as we've said, it's another contrasting pair theme. Again, clouded by ambiguity. Typically, you'd expect light to be positive and dark to be negative. As we've said, like the dark generally revolves around the bishops. And then when we consider light, my first thought is usually the torchbearer and just the whole concept of the banditos holding lights and campfires.
My first thought is fall away, because the torchbearer is like fire, right? It's not necessarily. I mean, it is. I do see where you're coming from, but like fall away when he says, "I'll keep the lights on in this place."
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right.
I do think that lights sometimes represent faith and him being closer to God, especially
and hope
because,
as well.
Yeah, in the Judge he says 3 lights are lit, but the 4th one's out. Like he's somewhat close to him. He's somewhat.
So sorry, I didn't mean to.
It's okay.
It's okay.
But yeah, I think the reason I think of the torchbearer's light is because it's directly contrasting from the darkness. You know, it's like a small light in the darkness. So it's kind of like fighting back against the darkness, which is the bishops. So it kind of represents that good and evil battle. So when I think of fire, especially with the banditos, I think of like the campfire, and how when you look at it as a prop, when you look at it physically, you think of a small campfire, you think of a group of people. They're going to huddle around this small light in the middle of the darkness. It brings them close together as people. It represents this kind of coming together, this kind of going through things in unity. So I think that's kind of the general idea that I have when I think about light. But then there's also neon, which is associated with the bishops,
I mean,
some sort of life source to them.
Neon and the thing with the gas is they're essentially like fake versions of that thing, right?
Yeah.
Like
it's
neon,
like synthetic light.
Synthetic light, and gas is fake fire.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because fire is essentially more primitive. It comes down to like the basic survival, the need for surviving. Fire is, you know, an element of the earth. It's a natural thing. When it comes to neon, it's more of a synthetic thing. And I think that also links to like Never Take It, where they say they keep lying through their fake teeth. And when they talk about, what was it?
Mm-hmm.
What's that lyric about synthetic highs?
Oh, in Mulberry Street.
Something. That's it. Yeah. In Mulberry Street, they mention like everybody relies on synthetic highs. It's all very fake in Dema, as we know from the whole propaganda thing that we got going on. But yes, so I think the fact that neon is kind of linked, well, completely linked to vialism and death and glorifying something that shouldn't be glorified, it kind of gives light a new meaning. And it's like weaponized, because they like to weaponize concepts that are generally associated with the banditos. You know, their kind of survival and their hope then gets weaponized and flipped and turned into something bad to be used against them.
Yeah, I mean,
obviously that's a more general thing that happens throughout Dema, but yeah.
Yeah, the neon graves is a great example of that. Like you said,
mm-hmm.
It's like there's obviously synthetic light, and they're trying to make it as if that's a good thing. That's the light that they're looking for.
They're lighting up a graveyard. They are literally illuminating the metropolis. They're kind of making it this thing that stands out. They're revolving around death, when obviously that's not what the banditos want to do. That's not what people with free thought are going to conform to. They can see. It's kind of ironic, because light is supposed to be associated with being able to see, but the way that the bishops use it is kind of like blinding people to the reality of what's going on.
Oh, I love that idea. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, to be fair, I just realized it as I was talking about it. But yeah, it's really very interesting. Yeah. I see you've gone on to Night and Day.
That's the thing. I couldn't find Land Art this whole time. I thought, why are you talking about oh my god, because I couldn't find it.
That's fine. If you have anything else to say about Light and Day, you can, but we can go on to Night and Day. Light and Day? Light and Dark. We can go on to Night and Day.
Night and Day. Okay, so Night and Day, there are a few lines that I really love, because Tyler obviously talks about the night being the hardest and the day being better, or like a chance to correct what you've done, a chance to just to start over, right? Truce. Now the night is coming to an end, the sun will rise, and we will try again.
Yep. I've got that one written down too.
There's also a line in the Pantaloon that I really love, is that, well, first there's the line that talks about that person being old, right? He's seen too many stare downs between the sun and the moon. Like, he's seen the sun shining and setting.
Yeah, I never even realized that. Yeah, he's an old guy.
Yeah.
He's seen a lot.
And
I think
if we go back to the Han cold concept, he says it's warmer in the morning than what it is at night.
Yeah, because essentially the nighttime is the hardest time. And then if the morning comes and the sun rises, that's when you know that you've made it through the night. So that's when you know that you've succeeded again. And it's a cycle. And obviously cycles is important. To be fair, we could have made a theme out of that, but we'll go into that in another time anyway. But
I mean, Guns for Hands, another great example of this, because this is one of the most recurrent themes. I can't explain it. It comes up many times in songs, is what I meant to explain.
Yeah. I think also Mulberry Street is really interesting, because it kind of goes against the rule of what we've said about because he says, keep your sunny days, leave us in the rain. He's essentially
Well,
I think that
he's
that's
talking.
directly.
He's literally talking about the propaganda, though.
Yeah, exactly.
He's seen the propaganda and he's responding to it.
Yeah, they're painting Dema as this real bright, sunny place, and he knows that it's not a bright, sunny place. He's been there. He's outside of the walls because he was inside them before. He knows that it's not true, but he's almost mocking them, saying, "Keep your sunny days." He doesn't care. They'll stay out in, like, because obviously weather links to seasons and seasonal depression, and like trying to, like, a sunny day is supposed to be a happy day. A rainy day, rain is essentially a pathetic fallacy of misery. So if he's saying leave us in the rain, he's essentially saying, like, we don't need this synthetic sunny place. We don't believe you. We'd rather stay here where it's miserable as long as we're together and we've got a rebellion kind of thing going on. Like, they don't have any intention of joining the bishops or committing to that system.
Yeah.
It's like, it's hard to explain, but it's the whole leave us in the rain thing is it's like they're making the decision.
Hands and feet to rain on your parade.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I can't think straight right now.
Yeah,
but,
me neither, honestly.
It's okay.
We'll get there.
But yeah, essentially.
We'll keep saying that until that happens. We're manifesting. We're manifesting getting better.
But what's also a bit of a contrast from leave us in the rain is when in Ride he says, I just want to stay in the sun. So he goes from saying, I just want to stay in the sun, and then by Scaled and Icy he's saying, keep your sunny days, leave us in the rain. It's almost about, like, realization, because the sun is obviously that conveys light. The sun creates light. The sun allows you to see something. So you could say that the light allows you to see what's really going on. But when you consider Dema and how synthetic it is and how fake everything is there, you can consider light as something more that's blinding you. So when you're in the dark, you're really able to see what's going on.
Definitely. I mean,
it's kind of like a flipped concept.
Another thing in 21 Pilots songs is that anything can have two meanings that are often like contradicting each other.
It's a bit of a paradox because it's the opposite to what you'd expect it to be.
I mean, that's what makes it interesting, because Tyler could use the same metaphor to mean two completely different things.
Exactly, 100%. But yeah, obviously, like the staying in the sun thing during Ride, that's long before all the Scaled and Icy stuff happened. And trying to think what the lyrics are. I just want to stay in the sun where I find.
Yeah.
I know it's hard sometimes. So he's essentially, if like hypothetically, if we looked at the sun as being Dema, like just hypothetically, if he's saying, I just want to stay in the sun where I find it's hard sometimes.
Wait, why would the sun be Dema?
No, I'm saying, like, if you consider, like, Dema as this place full of sunny days, or at least that's how they paint it. So if you were to say, like, he knows that it's hard there, but he wants to stay there at that point. But anyway, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I just meant it's...
think they started painting it like that in the Scaled and Icy era. Like, I don't think there was any...
Yeah, true.
Well, I might be wrong about that, actually, because obviously they're glorifying everything. And
but it's more like... I think it's to do with them finding the journals and everything online.
Oh, definitely.
That they needed to start gaslighting people because the rebellion was getting too strong.
Yeah, they responded to the rebellion.
Yeah.
So, like Riot and stuff, that was obviously before all of that. So I'm not sure. I do think the sun...
Maybe when he says, I just want to stay in the sun, he just means he doesn't want it to be nighttime.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Pieces of peace in the sun's peace of mind.
Also, I feel like this is kind of unrelated, but you brought up the, like, elements of the earth earlier. Like can you remind me of them? Like water, air, fire.
And earth.
And earth.
I think is the fourth one. Yeah.
I feel like Time to Say Goodbye really reminds me of that, when he's like, I've taken the sun and taken the air. I just want to run and water my care. I want to believe that I'll be free elsewhere. And like Tyler talks about water, he talks about air, he talks about fire. As I'm explaining this, I'm realizing that this is less researched and less.
It's okay though, because I think elements are definitely something really strong in.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, water is more associated with ice, I'd say, and like the cold.
I was thinking about addict with a pen, which is a whole thing.
Oh yeah. Water is definitely a thing then. I don't know about Earth. I think Earth is definitely visually represented as like Trench, just as a place, like the place where they've decided to film it, like the mountains and all that kind of stuff. Like it's definitely represents the outside of the city.
Yeah, but I feel like he does talk about
the ground, in the pantaloon where he says all your friends fertilize the ground you walk. The earth is essentially a place of death. The earth is where we're buried. So I guess that's more where it comes into it.
I mean, if you're talking about that, we can give another example in like Choker, right? The sun, what's that line? God, I hate being
cut us open, dry us out. Cut us open, dry us out.
No, this when he talks about the grave. When he talks about and this.
I'm gonna Google it.
No, I know it. If I just do the rap, okay, fine. I'll do the entire rap and then I'll find it.
Go on then. Go on.
How does it start?
Like a little splinter buried in your skin.
Someone else can cover it up, but when you've got the pin, it hurts a little listen. You can even push it further, and when your body's screaming out, just your body's listening. Like a silhouette that you can barely see, as a shadow cast upon the ground where you'll eventually lay forever.
Yeah,
is what I meant.
Yeah, and then that definitely, and then obviously the whole thing about the day moving on. The day goes on, the sun moves behind you.
I mean, Semi-Automatic has one of my favorite lines, which is Tyler trying to say, like there's a metaphor for the sun setting, right? And he says, I will be saved for one whole day until the sun makes the hills its grave. So he's basically saying that I will be okay when it's daytime.
Until the nighttime.
I
have questions.
Comes. Go on then. Yeah.
I'm speaking.
Yeah.
That whole bit you said at the end of Choker there, right? With the whole thank you. With the whole light and darkness kind of thing. Are shadows relevant? Because he mentions shadows in Hometown as well.
Definitely.
100%. Shadows can be the bishops.
Yeah, I just talked about shadows possibly being the bishops or representing that. I feel like whenever he talks about multiple people, like when he talks about one thing, it can be like blurry face or like that bad side. But when he talks about multiple things, like he talks about voices in his head and like heavy dirty soul, he talks about shadows, plural, right? You know,
I think also the shadows could be considered a way of hiding as well, because obviously the banditos who are outside of the city, they're hiding from the bishops and everything that's going on in there. And so you could consider them to be in the shadows.
I think that it's also interesting that when you look down on the ground and you see a shadow, the shadow is just you. It's just like the sun reflecting. I don't know what it's called, but it's like it's yourself. If you move, the shadow moves, right? So I think that it's a perfect metaphor, because all of those parts in Tyler, that Tyler talks about, is essentially him, and it all comes back to him.
Yeah, and yeah.
Do you not agree
I was
with
just gonna say, me? No, I do agree with that. I was just gonna say something different.
We'll say it.
Right. I was gonna say the last part of that song where the rear view only blinds you. I don't know how to describe this. I'm not very good with my words. But yeah, I don't know how to describe what I'm trying to say.
I relate to you right now. You have no idea.
It just feels like because you're always you're speaking about like the light and the darkness being very significant things, and the sun's going behind you. Does that mean his past is, I don't know, blinding him?
The sun was behind you is actually such a good thing to analyze. It's just
that whole last bit is very interesting, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, we were going to talk about the skin as being a recurrent theme, right? And if we look at the Choker rap verse, like a little splinter buried in your skin. Someone else will cover it out, but when you've got the pin, it hurts a little less, and you can even push it further in. When your body's screaming out, trust your mind's listening. That's really interesting, because it reminds me of like that line in Car Radio, of like my skin will scream, reminding me of who I killed inside my dream, because he talks about his skin screaming and like, or like an uncomfortable experience with his skin. I hope that I'm making sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like skin and bones is a really big thing. If I could just put it into words, which is the whole struggle of this podcast, trying to take that big thing that's called your brain.
I think Choker definitely links to Taxi Cab. It's just the way he talks about the rear view and the sun blinding you. It just reminds me of Taxi Cab. Yeah.
Elaborate.
Because when he says, like, he's talking about death, he's talking about laying in the ground forever. Obviously, in Taxi Cab, he's essentially in a hearse. He's in a coffin.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about how the day just is going to go on anyway, it just reminds me of how they say, we're driving towards the morning sun where all your blood is washed away and all you did will be undone. The whole thing about, like, he's just been questioning whether he's alive or dead. He's not even sure where he is. But it's just about the morning sun. They're just going towards the morning. You know, the day's just going to carry on. But it's also the opposite, because the sun's moving behind him in Choker, whereas they're going towards it.
I feel like in many songs, like you just remind me, there was another theme that I wrote down that didn't make it to the presentation. He's like in a stage between life and death, right? I mean, we can see that very clearly in Trees, and we can see that very clearly in Time to Say Goodbye. I mean, in Trees, he literally says, I can feel your breath, I can feel my death.
Yeah.
In Time to Say Goodbye, he's literally, it feels like almost a eulogy for yourself. It feels like someone being at that stage where they're close. And a lot of the times in songs, like, that experience can be described as something that's confusing, and that's something that's like a dream, right? Or something that's this, you know, I wish I had the word.
Yeah, it can be difficult to describe sometimes.
It can be difficult to talk.
Yeah.
Can we just say that? It can be really difficult to talk.
Yeah.
I don't know how people do it.
To be fair, you run out of things to say and you just don't know what to say next.
I mean, it's not even that I run out of things to say, it's that my mind moves a lot faster than my mouth.
Yeah, same.
That was a horrible way to explain it, but like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's hard to talk when your brain is talking to you.
Yeah, I get that. But yeah, I think with the whole night and day theme, obviously that ties into, because the nighttime ties into sleep, which is on the next slide. So we could probably go on to that now.
I feel like I had more to say about night and day, but I'm not sure what.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm not sure what. I mean, we could definitely talk about anathema. We didn't mention anathema, and that's a huge thing of the like. Well, it talks about insomnia and talks about just it elaborates on, you know, being not okay in the nighttime. And
yeah, it says, "Why don't you say goodnight so I can say goodbye?"
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's what's going on.
I do think that links more to dreams and sleep, because he actually talks about dreams and sleep. Like, he's saying, won't you go to someone else's dreams? Won't you go to someone else's head?
Well, yeah, because he can't sleep, or his dreams, when he does sleep, his dreams are not good.
Yeah, but at least when he wakes up, he's fine and dandy.
You know what? I found the lore journal that I have right now, like the lore notebook that I use when I just like, it's nothing huge. I just like write whatever I'm thinking, and like if I have ideas and stuff. it used to be my mom's English like learning notebook.
Oh my
I
God.
just realized, and like there was a moment, like I think it was a year ago or 2 years ago, where I gave her the lyrics of "Ode to Sleep," and I was like, "Study that if you're trying to study English. If you're trying to get better in English, take this song." And I remember she was like talking to me like on my way to school about it one day. This is totally unrelated, but like I found like her like analyzing the song when I was looking through the Dema notebook, and I thought that was so funny. Of like, oh, like this is demons, and like he wakes up fine and dandy, and like, and I remember her talking to me about it, and like, yeah, so he talks about like demons, and like, yeah, what is that about? And I was like trying to explain it to her on my way to school, like really passionately. Anyways, that's totally
Brilliant.
unrelated.
It's fine. It's interesting. I wish I could get my parents into the law, but they won't.
Oh,
I just ramble about it anyway.
I definitely didn't get them into the lore. I feel like that's way too I mean, I feel like I would need to know how to explain it. That's what this podcast is for.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember.
Do you think?
Sorry,
No, I was just. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I feel like this is less interesting, but I just remember during the trench era when Jumpsuit came out, and they were like, "What is this about?" And I had a stroke trying to explain it. I couldn't.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, I thought that Nico and the Niners was a weird name for a song, so I avoided listening to it.
What? Really? But we already knew about like the DMA Oregon
I
stuff.
didn't. I didn't yet know.
That's so funny.
I hadn't consumed 21 Pilots content in like 2 years by that point. But you know. But yeah, I think. Do you feel like we've said enough about Night and Day? Bear in mind, we still have quite a few themes to get through.
What if I said no and we just stayed here forever? Yes, I think we said enough.
Okay, so I mean, sleep and dreams. That slide immediately is talking about the night.
Sleep. We said that in the last episode. It's one of the most important. Yeah. Go on.
I think. I was just going to say Tyler's obviously. I don't know if he is now or if he was or if he whatever, but he's spoken about insomnia before. Obviously, like Guns for Hands especially talks about being kept up at night by negative thoughts, especially with other people. But there's also the interesting thing with sleep is that it's associated with dreaming.
Sorry, yeah? It sounds like you said he was like sleeping with other people.
No, that's not what I meant.
I'm sorry. It just sounded like you were saying, like, not like he's sleeping with other people, but like he's in a bed with other people, all like trying to fall asleep together. You know, that's what I was picturing in my head.
I mean, the picture that we have of Tyler here.
Exactly. Exactly. It's the visuals. That's what's throwing me off.
Well, anyway, I mean, yeah, I mean, when it comes to sleep, it's also associated with dreaming. Because, well, I mean, you dream when you fall asleep, or at least most people do. Not everyone, but anyway, that's besides the point. So the whole thing about Dema and what it really is, obviously, it's an invention within Tyler's imagination. It's how he visualizes his kind of mental health and his life and just everything that's going on. So I consider Dema to be some sort of dream world, especially with all the kind of when they talk about mirrors and reflections. It's kind of like
definitely, but
projection.
I do want to reiterate that because we did talk about this today about like is Dema Tyler's mind? Is it Josh's mind? Is it both of their minds like mashed up together? Because I do think that we tend to like talk about Tyler a lot and like kind of like forget that Josh is also a main part of the story.
Yeah. I personally think that the way that Tyler has spoken a lot about how Josh has helped him out of a negative place, and Tyler's always been the songwriter, I would find it like general to assume that it's mostly Tyler's world, but now Josh fits into it.
Exactly. So that's what I was going to say, like, especially as we move into Scaled and Icy.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, I think, fits into that world a little more.
Obviously, even if he's not going through the same things as Tyler, He's
I mean,
going
he-
through what Tyler's going through because he's so close to Tyler.
Yeah, but he might be going through the same things. Like, we're all, the whole thing is that we're all, as human beings, are going through essentially the same things and the same struggles.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, especially with him being like the torchbearer, like, he's kind of leading, he's like this, literally like this shining light that's kind of leading the way, kind of like a redemption sort of thing. It makes you wonder how he fits into Dema. Who would his bishop be? Who,
Oh,
you know, all that kind of stuff.
We just talked about this today, about like what we're seeing is most likely Tyler's version of Dema, right? But if we were to go to Josh's head and look at his version of Dema, it could be completely different.
You wonder what it would be, yeah.
It could be completely different. Actually, Spooky Jim fits into all of this.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of funny to talk about, like, Spooky Jim. But that visual that we saw, I think it was before Hometown? No, before Polarize. Before Polarize in, like, 2016, whatever. Of the, like, don't go up on stage. The first time that we saw, like, Josh's bishops. And I feel like now, even though what we're seeing is mostly Tyler's mind, like, it's both of their minds mashed up together, and we really saw that in the live stream experience. Even the merch that they sold, like the Jim Dunn t-shirt and like Josh's dog being in the music video.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it's easy to assume that everything revolves around Tyler because obviously he's got kind of like a leadership role. Yeah. And he writes the lyrics. But when you see
I was saying
Josh
that as a joke.
No, but I mean,
no, but it's true.
Though.
It's true. It's true.
But when you see Josh as a bandito, you always think like, okay, so he's on the right side of things. He's not under the control of the bishops. But then you consider, why would he be a bandito? They're the rebellion. They're essentially fighting back. So it implies that anyone who's a bandito has been in the city before and been under their control to know that they wanted to fight back against it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Josh is just not trapped in Dema and never has been. It just implies that he's not trapped in there in the same way that Tyler still is, where he keeps going back.
But he is a resident of Dema. And it is it is safe to assume that he has his own bishop because he lives in Dema, just like Tyler, and he ran away just like Tyler, and just because we didn't exactly see his escape story.
No, I'd be interested to find out more about that, but I wonder whether we will.
I told you, I have like a gut feeling that in the next era we're gonna get a lot more of Josh and like the torchbearer.
That would be really cool.
Yeah.
That would be really cool, especially as the kind of torchbearer idea is sort of where the law started a lot. Well, not started, but I just mean it was an early concept. Whether it was Josh's torchbearer or not, there was obviously talks about someone with a torch having a plan in, was it March to the Sea?
A car torch of death. It's literally in the song. In the song title.
Car torch
Sorry, I'm so mean to you in these episodes.
It's okay. It's okay. I forgive you.
Okay.
But yeah, as we're talking about sleep and dreams, I think really important, we don't believe what's on TV when he says, don't want to know who I would be when I wake up from a dream of sleep. So what does he mean by that? Where is he when he's asleep? Is he in Dema? Is he somebody else when he's asleep?
I think that being asleep, like he talks about it as like a state of unawareness. And like,
so he doesn't want to be aware again.
Well, the exact opposite. The exact opposite.
Really?
When he is aware of all the bad things that are going on in the world and what's wrong with us and what's wrong with us, like as a society, and like all these like big huge questions about life and morality and death. It's much harder to live life that way. It's much easier to just put on a mask, pretend that none of this is real, and just not dwell on these things. I mean,
so if we were to look at the TV as a metaphor for being asleep, because obviously TV is a fake reality. It's you generally when you're watching the TV, you're watching something fake. You're watching a fictional imaginary world that someone's come up with. And that's exactly what you're doing when you're asleep. You're seeing, well, you can have bad dreams, but you can also see what you want to see, especially if you're daydreaming.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I guess you could see it as a metaphor for dreaming. But
yeah, I mean, he says what we want, we know we can't believe, because if we had a choice, we wouldn't put all of these, like, we wouldn't have all of these issues, and we wouldn't. Yeah, but the world is much more complicated than that's what he talks about, I think.
Yeah, and then I think. Wait, what if my dream does not happen? Would I just change what I've told my friends? He's not talking about being asleep and dreaming there, is he? He's talking about his dream in the world.
To be a musician, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of links, because that also goes back to Stressed Out, when they're saying, like, used to play pretend, give each other different names, used to build a rocket ship, whatever it is, fly to outer space, all that kind of stuff. It's about, like, having childhood dreams, having these big expectations for the world, and then growing up and realizing that's not necessarily how things are going to be, because, wake up, you need to make money. Obviously, a lot of the time when they talk about these kind of concepts, bear in mind, these are both blurry-faced. These are both before the pilots have blown up, This is before their worldwide sensations.
Kind of. So, I mean, they were touring around the world, like, before.
Yeah, but they weren't, like, they didn't have millions of followers.
Blurryface changed everything for them, and
they sang a lot about the radio and about how they don't expect, because it's like the few, the proud, and the emotional. They were talking about how they weren't mainstream. They had a big emphasis on that. But so yeah, when he's saying, what if my dream does not happen? Blah, 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 wake up, you need to make money. It's kind of all these things about these conflicting ideas of wanting to do what you want to do and wanting your dreams to be a reality, but not knowing if they can.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's obviously a different way that dreams exist to the Dema dream thing.
I think it is interesting to think of Dema as, like, being in a different state of consciousness. Yeah.
I think that links to eyes as well, because we'll talk about eyes later.
Should we go to eyes? What's the next slide?
We could do.
I hate this picture. One. I told you to take it down. I hate this picture.
I think it's funny.
It's kind of
We'll just come back to eyes later. But yeah, we can talk about fear.
I miss Spooky Jim. Anyways.
Spooky. Yeah, so fear. I didn't have a lot to say about fear because I kind of looked at it too late. But obviously, fear isn't just about being afraid of your own mind. It's about being afraid of other people's minds too. You fear on behalf of other people and their well-being.
Fear is
obviously guns for hands.
Almost every single 21 Pilots song, you can find it, because when you do think about that stuff, you become afraid. I mean, you can be afraid of so many things, and it's just he talks about a scary world to be in.
Yeah, and then fear can be, like, seen as a weakness because it can then be weaponized. Like, people who are afraid are easier to control because, for obvious reasons. Like, the bishops, especially in Dema, will weaponize the fear that is felt by the citizens of Dema, and in that way they can control them. If they're afraid, they're going to block out their emotions and just do what they're told and get on with whatever it is. It links to, like, the whole dictatorship.
Propaganda is much more effective when people are afraid and they're not sure what to do, they're not sure what to believe.
Exactly. 100%. It's essentially, it is essential for propaganda to work that the people who are receiving it are frightened out of their minds.
Yeah.
They need something to cling to, and that's why fear links to hope.
I mean, I feel
that reminds me of peace.
I feel like we're missing so many songs, but they might, like, we might not need to mention them. Sorry, I just passed the. I just moved on to the next slide. Anyways, what I was gonna say is that Car Radio is a song that talks about fear a lot. I mean, that there's that line that we all know. I thought you were gonna.
I
thought you were gonna be
forgot.
like, yeah, and like say that line for me. Hold on, because I was saying that, and I thought that I knew that line. I thought, but then I got scared. Anyways, there's faith and there's sleep. We need to pick one, please, because faith is to be
One,
awake,
please.
is to be awake, is
Faith
for us
be
to
awake.
think, and for us to think is to be alive, and I will try with everyone to come across like I'm dead to let you know you need to try to think. He talks about being afraid. He does.
Mhm.
I found out something great, my lungs will feel, and then deflate, they feel with fire, so desire. I know it's during my time today. I have these thoughts often I ought to. Just take my word for it. He talks about being afraid in car radio. Take my word for it.
And it's one thing consists of consistence, and it's that we're all battling fear.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you. Thank you so much.
We got there in the end. We
did it. I knew it.
Well, you know.
I knew it. I knew there was a line, and I just couldn't find it.
Well, we're there now. We're battling fear. There you have it, everybody.
This whole podcast is battling fear. I'm not a podcast type. I've never
That's okay, because you know what? Peace will win and fear will lose.
Exactly. Peace will win and fear will lose.
That's in the same song that is also car radio. So yeah, you're right. It's a very very prominent.
That's crazy, actually. That's
car
insane.
radio.
I didn't know that. That's crazy. Wow.
But yeah, I mean, car radio, obviously, he's talking a lot about fear in that song. It's not the only song where he's talking about it, but yeah, fear is something to be weaponized. I think, especially in March to the Sea, where there's like a line of people all submitting to this line, they're all marching towards something which is heavily implied to be their death. And they're afraid to challenge what they're doing. They're saying this line is the only way. That kind of links to like religion and how a lot of people who believe certain religions or follow certain beliefs believe that it's the only thing they're allowed to believe. They think that's the only way that they're allowed to live their lives. So I think that when they say, when he starts like hearing the voice that says, follow me instead, he's kind of realizing there's an alternative. He's kind of becoming a little bit, I'm not saying immune to fear, but he's kind of,
when I listen to that song, I think about that line in a way that's like, you think he says, in Time to Say Goodbye, I want to believe that I'll be free elsewhere. Which, by the way, we didn't talk about being free yet.
No, that's later on.
Okay. By the way, Sophie had to leave, but
okay,
it's okay.
That's all right. Well, we need to find a way to fit her in better, I think, because we're kind of just rambling.
We're definitely rambling.
I think we should have little checkpoints with like opportunities for her to ask questions and things like that in the future. We'll sort that out for next week. We're
gonna take a 60-second break. So 1 minute. 1 minute. Just I want to see the be right back screen. I feel like it will make me feel a lot better. It will help my anxiety a lot. So I'm gonna put the be right back screen on, and I just really need that. I need that picture of Taylor. I need to see it. So that's just for me.
Okay.
Anyways. Hot, Cold, and Fire and Ice. Oh my god, so many songs. So many songs that like relate to one another.
Literally, it's very prominent. Obviously, fire, banditos. Also death, fire, burning.
Fire as a symbol of destruction is a big thing.
Oh, 100%. Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
You'll find things about that everywhere. Like any like law-related thing that you find, there's going to be like suggestions of fire destroying things. That's why we think that next era fire is going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, Trash.
Huge foreshadowing.
Trash
the dragon. He literally breathes fire and his body says destroy on it.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that already, but yeah.
But like in a massive contrast, obviously, there's ice. generally the cold, scaled and
I know what I was
icy.
gonna say. Sorry.
Go on then. That's where I gone.
I kept thinking about implicit demand for proof, and I was like, where's the fire? Where's the fire? And then I found that line. I know you're not a liar, and I know you could set fire this day is the first line of implicit demand for proof. The first line, and they're talking about someone coming down to destroy.
Rain down and destroy. Yeah, you're right.
Rain down and destroy me. And I also think that it's interesting how to use light and darkness, what we've talked about before. Because he says, strike me down, I'm calling your lightning down from your dark hiding place. So we're talking about light and dark in the same sentence.
Mm-hmm. Is the you could set fire this day, is that to do with like religious, like doomsday?
Oh, it might be because, hell and fire.
Yeah, but he's saying like you could set fire to this day, like you could just burn the world. I feel like, isn't that what doomsday is?
I mean, yeah.
I'm going to Google it.
I mean,
I don't really know a huge amount about
Christianity. Doomsday, I mean, there's another thing that I found interesting that I don't even remember the word, so I can't even like address it. But there's another, like, sort of like a religion, an old religion that I thought could be somewhat, like, it could have somewhat inspired the story. Apparently it was in Lord of the Rings or something, and I know Tyler watched that. But I think I sent you it. It has this whole, like, thing about doomsday, about fire and ice, and about trees, and about 9 worlds. Oh, yeah, that's the thing. It has the 9 worlds.
9 worlds. That's the 9 circles of hell. Oh,
yeah, there's that too. We talked about that theory. We talked about so many theories.
What's the 9? What were you saying about 9 worlds?
9 worlds, I talked... okay, it was a long time ago, so it's okay if you don't remember. I think it's called Asgard or something. Because I don't remember...
What, like in...
I don't remember the name. Hold on, I'll write it down. 9 worlds. Asgard. But anyways, it's like... It reminded me of that because I just had a feeling that it might have inspired the story in some way.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember talking about that.
Yeah, I just thought it would be fun to get into.
9 worlds of Norse mythology. Interesting.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's that. Norse cosmology. Also, when you look that up, there's an article and there's literally like this guy that looks like a bishop with like antlers.
I think the number 9 is just so prominent, like in Blasphemy when he says, I will try 9 times to realize 9 crimes, but I have more than 9 lives. Drown, I meant drown, not blasphemy. But yeah, it's just, there's so many, and I think 9 is supposed to represent a full cycle and all that, but that's a different topic
also,
for a
today I was
day.
watching the Levitate music video, and I'm sure people noticed this, and I'm just like late. I'm late on a lot of stuff. But I paused the video, and I noticed that when the banditos are like lighting up their torches, and they're all in a row, right? They're going to the camp. There's this one frame that if you pause it, like all the lights turn down and you can only see the lights, the torches. Sorry, you can only see the torches, and there are exactly 9 torches in that frame.
Oh, that's interesting.
I just love how they have so many Easter eggs in their videos.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's so much there's just so much to it, really.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think, what else have we got about hot, cold, fire, ice? We've got
there were so many, but if I move the tabs, then they'll see it. The things that I wrote down. I'll look it up on my phone later.
I mean, there's levitate. He says, ever since the 7th grade, I've learned to fire breathe.
Which also,
and then
it makes me think, like, is he going to become trash? Is he going to see his trash?
I always associated that lyric with Josh, especially as Josh has writing credits on that song, on Levitate.
He doesn't. So that's a myth.
He doesn't?
No, and
he's a myth?
That's a myth, and someone asked them in like a press conference, and it was so embarrassing. He was like, no. No, I didn't write the song.
That's disappointing.
I think Palmini did, though. Palmini.
Oh, okay. But But yeah, I've associated that lyric with Josh a lot. And I think the whole thing about him having that kind of power in Choker, was it Choker or was it Shy Away?
But how could, I'm sorry, like, if Tyler says, ever since the 7th grade I learned fire breathe, and like Tyler started writing songs at about like 7th grade, like, how do you think Tyler is talking about Josh?
I don't know. To be fair, I've always had like a clouded idea of that lyric, but I just always thought about how Trash the Dragon is obviously going to be the entity in Dema that can fire breathe, if anyone.
Oh,
And then
absolutely.
Josh turned things pink
Oh,
by opening his mouth and like an icy fire came out.
it is a possibility that Josh would be the one to seize Trash. Also, I think that just like Tyler is each one of the bishops, and we can see that in the story that he's unaware of it, but he's starting to realize it, especially in the Clancy letters. If you read the few last letters, he's starting to become aware that he has these episodes, right, when he's becoming the bishops, supposedly, because all of these characters are essentially him. They're essentially Tyler, just,
Yeah.
So I feel like Josh could also be, a bishop, or turn into a bishop, or have some sort of connection. I think connection is the right word.
Connection, yeah. I don't think Josh is a bishop.
I mean, the Choker music video, he was literally a bishop. That's what it looks like to me. That's what it looked like to me. I mean, he totally wasn't Tyler's friend. He was so like serious, and and he literally chased him down, and the blue thing came out of his face.
Yeah. Speaking of the bishops, I think again with fire, Nico and the Niners, obviously. I'm flying from a fire from Nico and the Niners. Personally, I see that massively as foreshadowing.
Oh,
so
definitely,
you can imagine.
We talked about this. Definitely.
Yeah. You can imagine, like, what's interesting is that I always thought about, like, so flying from the fire. I think about Clifford the Vulture. I think about Thrash the Dragon. I think about the flying animals, and I think about how.
Remember in the Clancy letters when he talks about his dreams of flying?
Yeah.
I definitely think that it's Tyler talking about, because the bishops sees it's a theory, but I think this theory is pretty solid. Because the bishops could be seizing the vultures in order to spy on the residents of Dema. That's why Clifford is seized in the Trench album cover. So if Tyler is essentially one of the bishops, if he's becoming momentarily, like, he's becoming Nico for a second and then he's back to Tyler, something like that, then he could be seizing that vulture, and he could be having these dreams of flying.
Oh my god, wait, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like linked to his dreams. Like, you know when he says, don't want to know who I would be when I wake up from a dream of sleep, all that kind of stuff. What if he has different, like, I'm not saying different personalities, I'm saying, like, when he falls asleep, what if he then has this kind of spiritual connection to the other characters in Dema, because essentially they're part of him. And when he's asleep, he's going to be able to be part of them.
That's the whole thing that I've been saying. I don't know if it's like, especially like when he falls asleep, that could be interesting, because the whole idea of dreams in the Clancy letters is a whole thing.
And I think it's really interesting that you can imagine him seeing from the perspective of lots of different characters when he's asleep or when he's dreaming.
When you go back and you look at the bigger picture and what it is that we're looking at. Actually, Connie, can you talk for like 5 minutes? Because I have a call from my mom.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I personally, I think that in there's certain songs where it feels like Tyler's speaking from the perspective of another character, or you can interpret them in that way. So Choker and Shy Away, I think they both have, like, I see them both as well, Keons. in ways. Like I know it's down to interpretation, but especially in Shy Away, I always thought that it sounded like he was speaking from the perspective of Keon's, because he's talking a lot about kind of no, I think I'm getting confused. I'm getting it mixed up with Choker. I always thought that Choker felt more like it was from the perspective of what's his name, because he's saying how he was born a choker. And if there's one thing we know about Keon's, it's that his name comes from the words choke on smoke. And fire can essentially be weaponized to be used against the bishops, because smoke is something I don't know exactly how it's supposed to be, but smoke is essentially lethal to them, or it could be some kind of danger, some kind of weapon to be used against them. So when I think about the lyrics, I was born a choker, all this kind of stuff like choking on the circumstance, only smoking secondhand, it kind of sounds like it's from Keon's perspective. And he's talking about his roots and how he's supposed to be one of these evil bishops. He's supposed to be
I'm back.
the dark side. Hello.
Sorry.
I was just talking about how I think that Choker is from Keon's perspective, and the whole thing about fire and how
talking
it's
about
got
songs
smoke as a
being from
property.
Keon's perspective, I had this whole theory about the outside being from Keon's perspective.
Really?
Yeah.
That is interesting, actually.
I
was gonna say how I thought that the songs being from his perspective would then link to the whole thing we've just been saying about him falling asleep and being able to see from these other characters' perspectives. Because then he writes down his thoughts in the forms of songs. So he could be writing songs from the perspective of others. And then when he says a song he wrote that's never heard.
Yeah, sorry. Choker just like talking about Keon's or mentioning Keon's or being from Keon's perspective makes a lot of sense, because, you know, Tyler really, I feel like in the first verse, he's not being subtle at all. He's like, choking on the circumstance, only smoking secondhand. Like, why would he say that? Why would he put that like that? Like, he's clearly saying Keon's name.
He is. Well, in a way.
In a way.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry, go on.
Because he's saying choking rather than choke.
Yeah, but still, like, what the whole song Choker.
Yes, he's definitely talking about Keon's.
Yeah.
But that's why I wondered whether it was from Keon's perspective.
The thing is with the outside that I wanted to elaborate on is that, first of all, that entire song sounds kind of like from a bishop's perspective, in the sense that it's just talking. It's like Tyler in that song, Tyler or who's ever speaking, is kind of being like, I don't know how to put it, but like egotistical. Is that a word?
It is.
All right, so I'm gonna use that word for lack of a better word. Egotistical. He's being like kind of arrogant, I feel like is the way to put it. Especially in that outro, right? Little do they know that they can't touch me. I'm vibing. But I don't know, when I think about the lyrics and I try to imagine like a picture, right? I'm already bored. I'm pretty sure I've seen this one before. So I had this whole idea.
That could be about a dream.
Well, I had this whole idea that this is one of the cycles, right? So there's the cycles that we know from the videos of trench, like jumpsuit, have heavy dirty soul jumpsuit, Nico and the Niners levitate, and then it goes in a loop, right? It's a cycle. So
yeah, I see what you mean. Up and down, they're nodding, heads are moving up and down, like everyone just conforming.
First of all, I always thought that the beginning of that song was in the heavy dirty soul car. It just made the most sense. Because he says, I've got a long drive. I'll tape my eyes so I don't fall asleep again, which is another thing. Fall asleep. So he essentially dies over and over again. Okay, this is where it gets confusing. If I'm going to be talking about a theory, I need to have more prepared. But the thing is, we know that it could have been Blurryface in the Heavy Dirty Soul car, but it was kind of like, it was the in-between era between Blurryface and Trench and the Bishops, what they were. Like, we saw that Bishop, and he was wearing a black cloak instead of a red one, because it was kind of like the in-between era. Like, the Bishops weren't they weren't fully like formed yet. So
I think
yeah,
we spoke about the Outside before, and this whole thing about Keon's, because I remember talking about it and the Heavy Dirty Soul car, and it linking to him being on a long drive and everything happening over and over. But I also think it links to March to the Sea. Was it March to the Sea? Yeah. The thing about everybody standing in line, you know, and just heads moving up and down.
We talked about this. That line in the Outside, I believe, is the same line as March to the Sea.
Yeah, he literally says everybody standing in line.
And one by one, take a hit, join the club. And we talked about like what that line could mean.
Yeah, and then literally, he's talking about marching to the sea. And then in the rap, he says, I am a megalodon, oceans feeling like a pond. It's like, I'm above all this, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Underneath, they're clinging on.
Which also relates to the arrogant part. I mean, that whole rap verse. I mean, it sounds like a bishop talking about the banditos. Like, little cogs I'm stepping on. Then the little cogs got together, started a renaissance.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Switch it up on me.
Sounds like about the banditos.
This isn't Tyler speaking, is it? How could this be Tyler speaking?
I really don't think so. The explanation for this song that's not like lore related that Tyler said in interviews, my friend said this to me, that it was like about the music industry and about them like being a meteoric rise, right? And kind of like Tyler talking about that.
That is so cool how he can have two completely different meanings to a song.
Yeah.
More than two.
I mean, we should clarify that the theory that we're talking about is it hasn't been confirmed anywhere at all. But
it's all down to interpretation, but it fits into a narrative in the way that we're seeing it.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how that can happen.
Yeah.
But I do think, obviously, with every song that Tyler writes, there's a version that fits into the lore in his head, and then there's a version that he'll tell to the media.
Exactly. We saw that like so clearly with Scaled and Icy. Like, oh, it's scaled back and isolated. I wrote it in quarantine. Like, yeah, I love.
What's a blurry
that
face?
About him. What's a blurry face? Right? Actually, it's who's a blurry face. Oh my god, I remember exactly where I was when I watched that video, and I was like furious. I was like, how could he do that? How could he say that to him? Anyway, that guy was fired, right? I heard somewhere that he was fired,
Really?
and I was really happy. I'm sorry.
Poor guy.
I was really young, so I'm not gonna be happy if someone gets fired. But yeah, I don't know. I just hated that person. I don't know. Oh, right. I wrote down about the fire and ice thing. I wrote down the smoke aspect that we haven't talked about yet.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, I remember you said to me that fire could be the bishop's weakness. And that was like, when you said that to me a while back, it really made sense. Like, everything made sense to me, because that line in Heavy Dirty Soul, right? I'm smoking them out the basement. Sorry, that was my mic. I'm smoking them out the basement. I hope that they choke a smoke because I'm smoking them out the basement. It really makes sense that the fire would be the bishop's weakness. My mic is making this.
What is that?
I don't know. But I can hear it. Like, okay.
Oh. Yeah, also that kind of links to the only smoking secondhand thing, because if Tyler's saying that he's smoking them out of the basement and Keon's is just saying that he can only smoke secondhand, what's that suggesting? Is he saying that he's not affected by it in the same way?
Maybe. Or maybe he's aware that he's trying to
And yet his name is Choke on Smoke.
and it really makes sense that the bishops' defeat in quotations, because we still don't know if it's gonna be like an open ending. I mean, I do think it's gonna be like an open ending and a cycle thing.
Mhm.
But the bishops' defeat, it makes the most sense that it would be fire.
Yeah,
And that's
it does.
why, again, we're coming back to the whole trash burning down the city.
Especially as when you consider all the, like, again, when you go down to the elements are what the banditos have. They don't have anything. They're living by themselves out in the wild. They have the elements of the earth. They hold fire in their hands. Fire is probably the most deadly element because, I mean, you can't drown the city. You can't just blow wind on it and kill everyone. You know, the only thing they rightfully can use as a weapon is fire. So it makes sense that it would be something that's deadly to the bishops.
I don't think you can't drown the city. I mean, that's what happened in the Bible, right? I mean, I don't know much about the Bible.
How are the banditos, a little group of people with torches, going to drown a city? What I mean.
Remember that scene in the live stream where, like, Debbie had a bucket?
Yeah.
And she dumped it on him. Like,
they're just gonna get loads of buckets of water and just fill up the city.
Loads of buckets. I'm gonna switch up my mic real quick.
Okay. I think they would need at least 5 buckets to do the entire city. But
5.
Yeah.
I love that you said 5.
At least 9 buckets.
9. That's symbolic. 9 buckets to defeat. Oh my god.
9 bishops.
There was like in A Wizard of Oz. Wasn't there like a witch that if you like pour water on her, she dies?
I don't know.
You don't know? I swear.
No.
There was a witch that like the only way to defeat her was to pour water on her, and then she died.
So what other what actually I feel like we're still talking about fire and ice, but we've been talking about fire and ice for a long time now.
It's so exciting. We have so okay. No, but you're right. You're absolutely right. I also think that we didn't talk about water enough, because even like today watching the Shy Way music video, I realized like, wow, water is such a prominent thing. Also in Nico and the Niners, and like it's such a huge aspect, and I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm still trying to. Yeah, that is interesting. The fire and water aspect.
Mm-hmm. I think that we should move on for the sake of getting through the PowerPoint.
All right.
What one's next?
Yeah. By the way, I'm not looking at the chat or anything, so I'm not sure like if anyone's here, if anyone's saying anything.
Isolation. Okay.
Isolation.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry. Sorry. What?
Right.
That was by accident.
To be fair, I think isolation is generally just like, when you think about the law, there's usually a whole team. There's like the group of banditos, there's the group of bishops, you know, everyone's in groups. But at the end of the day, if it's all a part of Tyler's imagination, there's kind of like an isolated element to it there where it's all just him.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, when we look at the live stream experience at the ending of it, it really reminds me of that, of like everyone leaving and Tyler going back to the start. I mean, I really think Tyler's brain and how he's gonna end the story, I really think that it could be a thing of like him being by himself.
Yeah, because I mean the bishops symbolize like solidarity and there being multiple people going through something, but at the end of the day everyone's struggles are individual. I have
visuals for this one, so I'm just gonna put them on right now. It's just the Hayden's music video because I didn't have time. But it's okay.
Fair enough. But yeah, so let me see what I've written about isolation. Oh, that was not the right thing that I meant to do.
I mean, the first line that I think of is migraine, right? Shadows will scream that I'm alone. But I know we've made it this far, kid.
Yeah, and he's using the pronoun we, which is implying that he's not by himself. He's talking to the other people who have gone through, tough times. Like, we've
But
made it
it
as
is
far.
interesting that when he's thinking about the listeners is when he's alone writing, writing the songs. He's usually like imagining the concerts and the listeners and the feedback and everything when he's by himself.
And it goes with how he's said that it's kind of saved him to, not the only thing that saved him, but I mean, knowing that other people were going through things like he was, like his shadows are telling him that he's alone. His insecurities, his difficulties, they're telling him, you're going through this by yourself. And he's saying, no, I know that I'm not, because there's these people, there's the few, the proud and the emotional,
Yeah.
It's not just himself. There's other people out there. But yeah. I mean, the first line that I thought of was, I'm on an island, no one to confide in.
Definitely. You're so right. I mean, that's exactly, it goes back to the same thing, because I was talking about how writing the albums, even though he's thinking about the crowd, he's thinking about the listeners, it can be a really isolating thing, and Tyler likes to isolate himself when writing a record, and like, I think we saw a lot in Trench of like trying to minimize like outside influences and trying to really
because at the end of the day, Pet Cheetah, that song's more about the actual creating of the music. Like he's talking about his creative experience.
Yeah.
So when he says, I am on an island, no one to confide, he's talking about essentially isolating himself. Like, it's not that there isn't anyone he could confide in. It's he's making the decision not to, because he wants to write by him, like about his own experiences. He wants to talk about things from his own brain. He doesn't want someone else to influence.
I'm looking at the chat right now, and I'm sorry that we didn't respond to this earlier, but Jack said that Josh was reading a book on vialism in the Turker video.
Yeah, I saw that, but I saw it late.
Yeah, he was reading If by Nicholas Bourbaki, which isn't the book that they wanted to put in there, because like Mark said that apparently that book is like problematic, and it's like, you shouldn't read that book. But he was reading a book by Nicholas Bourbaki, so he's essentially, I mean, if that doesn't confirm that he's representing some sort of a bishop in that music video, I don't know what is.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, isolation. I also thought of Not Today a lot. Because he says
definitely
he's better off staying in the same room he was born in. He looks outside, he sees a whole world better off without him in it, trying to disturb it. Essentially that's what I meant. Essentially not thinking that he has a place, like isolating himself out of fear for not fitting in.
Yeah. That really makes sense. I'm trying to think of more examples too, because I'm sure there are a ton of examples.
Yeah, I mean, the whole staying in the same room I was born in, the judge, I probably should have stayed in summer house. It's the same sort of message.
See, that's a connection that I didn't think of.
Yeah. I also think Choker. A lot of stuff goes back to Choker, but he says like, alone, you're going to change my circumstance, and nobody's coming for me.
Yeah.
That one I have a lot of thoughts that I can't even gather
Joker
on.
Confused me. And it confused me from the second it came out. It was like, because I remember the first couple of times I listened to it, I thought it sounded like someone was trying to imitate 21 Pilots. And it kind of made sense with the lore, with the like, it was, the whole album was by the bishops, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, Tyler did talk about, like, in the Clancy letters, that he was like, although shackled, at least I could create again.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting.
Yeah.
And levitate. He says, oh God, I've lost what I was going to say. Oh yeah. Not even necessarily the lyrics, but the video for Levitate. He's among a group of banditos. He's outside the walls of Dema, and he's part of the rebellion, but he can be dragged away at any moment.
Exactly.
So even though he's in this group setting and he's with his people, at any moment he can be dragged back into this dark place.
That levitated music video is so interesting because
It really
the way
is.
it looks like some sort of a dream. Like
It
the
does.
effects that they used, right? When you see the banditos and stuff, and when you see, like, there are so many interesting shots in that video, and the way it was filmed, and like especially the moment when he gets dragged to Dema, like you can see there's a shot from like behind Tyler as if you're Nico, and like all these people that are sitting and like they're emotionless, and there's this guy that says welcome
Emotionless
to Trench.
marches.
Right. And there's this guy that says welcome to Trench, who's confused
in a low suspicious voice.
Yeah. I don't know, that whole video is interesting. I do think that it is worth it if we were to make an episode diving into music videos. We just would have to watch them muted, which I think is better anyways.
Yeah. We could literally do an episode about the Trench trilogy.
Oh,
Jumpsuit,
definitely.
Nico and the Niners levitate. But yeah.
Yeah, I think we should go to the next slide.
Okay.
Unless you have anything
Skin and
to
body. I don't. I think I've gone through everything.
add. Connie, the gun picture. What? You know what? There's a chance, I'm not going to take credit for it, but there's a chance that I made that. I know that I made something similar.
No way.
And I know that it was with that picture, and I know that it was around that same time frame, and I know that it was in that account that people like reposted, but I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't even have any notes about struggle/battle/war.
Okay, well, I've been saying that struggle slash... First of all, every song talks about some sort of struggle. I mean, I'm not going to say every song, because obviously there are exceptions to everything, but a lot of the songs talk about a certain struggle, whether that's Tyler battling with his inner self, Tyler battling with, trying to be a better person, wanting to be able to care for his loved ones, like House of Gold, wanting to someday like be able to buy his mom a house of gold, and like that's really a weird way to put it. But what I mean by that is that every song talks about a struggle, and he often refers to that struggle as like a battle or a war. The thing about like waging a war is something that he said multiple times in songs. I think the first time was blasphemy. Everybody thinks I'm just so free, which every time I hear that, you know what I'm hearing.
Just oh free.
Just oh free. Okay. Everybody thinks I'm just so free. Free did you hear the verse that came first, and how my own body is waging war on me. So that was the first example that I could think of. And then there's obviously migraine. Am I the only one I know waging my wars behind my face and above my throat? And this whole concept of Dema, and like how there's going to be a war. I mean,
yeah.
So that's what I thought when I thought about
Sophie.
that.
Sophie, we are on slide 12 out of 22.
Sophie? I was like, Sophie's here?
She's in the chat.
Oh,
I don't think I can go all the way through, not gonna lie.
I thought you were referring to me as Sophie.
No.
It's okay, we can move forward. Struggle is a big thing though. Like, okay, I had this written down so I can give examples.
I feel like yeah, I mean, I do feel like the thing is we've not talked about struggle. Is kind of something that's come up a lot.
Yeah, it wraps the whole thing up. Yeah. Maybe we shouldn't talk about it separately, because it's related to everything that we've talked about.
Yeah, maybe we should just move on for sake of getting through the slides.
Okay.
What's after whatever? What's next? It's still just playing Heathens.
Connie, you're so unserious. You're so unserious. I'm skipping the slide. Okay.
Wait, apparently the clips are laggy.
Oh. That's not good.
They've probably been lagging the whole time.
Ooh, that's really bad. I'm just gonna have to add them in post, and it's gonna be a nightmare.
Oh, well, you know.
This podcast has single-handedly ruined me, just so y'all know. You have no idea what it did for me. I mean, I feel like I'm a baby learning to speak for the first time. That's really weird, but that's what I feel like. I only talk about these things with Connie, and I feel like that was even new to me.
Yeah.
Our Lord.
Wait, so what slides next? Shall we go back to the PowerPoint instead of the video of Evans just looping?
I accidentally... Oh no. Hold on. Sorry. Sorry.
I'll be right back. Okay. So, are we on old age and growing up?
We are. Oh, sorry. I keep accidentally skipping slides. That's never gonna stop. Old age and growing up.
Okay. Obviously, this is a theme that starts really early on. Because it's really prominent in
this
self-titled.
Could be like, I remember at the beginning of the podcast we were like, you know, this is a chance to talk about, or did we say that? Because I remember writing it down, but I don't know if we said that. Oh, like, this is a chance to talk about.
I made a typo.
What?
On the slide, I accidentally typed "Oh my believer."
That's okay. We were like, this is a chance to talk about how Tyler discusses the same topics over the years, but like how his perspective could have changed. I don't think we actually said that. I think I just wrote it down. But
it's a good point.
Yeah, I think that like growing up, I mean, one of the first examples is the Pantaloon, which is a kind of depressing song about growing up. And then Slow Town isn't any better, right? But like I feel like sorry, but like what Tyler says that he.
I was just gonna say, I feel like you go first. We're just both talking. Okay, go on.
When Tyler like, as he got older, like he started glorifying growing old. He said that in the St. Lo interview in 2018.
Yeah, he did. That's exactly what I was gonna say at the same time. To be fair.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, but you should talk.
Yeah, I mean, the connotations of old age kind of change throughout the songs, because at the start, in Almost Believer, he's saying, we get colder as we grow older. You know, cold is kind of a negative thing. It's kind of painting old age as this lonely thing that just means you're near to death. But then when he talks about death and old age in Neon Gravestones, he's talking about it as an achievement, because it means that you've made it that far. And, you know,
right.
He says to find your grandparents or someone of age and pay some respect to the path they've paved.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and like
he's calling it being dedicated to life.
I mean, I think I can say that like in one of Tyler's older songs, and Just Like Yesterday, he's talking about how it's so hard to stay alive. Like, I can't live this way just to write a song and play, just to stay alive. Just enough to breathe away another day, another face, and I will lose another race. Save me now, because tomorrow's gone just like yesterday. And then as we go through the songs, he's talking about staying alive as like being a goal, or like being something that he's telling other people. And then when we get to Neon Gravestones and how he thinks about, you know, growing old. And even like, we don't believe what's on TV.
Celebrate.
We don't believe what's on TV. I used to say I want to die before I'm old, but because of you, I might think twice. Yeah,
he's actively changing how he views growing old throughout the songs. And yet you're right about the Pantaloon, because he talks about getting old as being this terrifying thing. You know, all your friends fertilize the ground you walk. Essentially, everyone's dying and
he's
being
also
buried
talking about someone who
losing your mind.
Hasn't gone better. Like, he talks about, he mirrors that old man, or like his grandfather, if he's talking about, I think he talks about his grandfather in that song. He talks about his grandfather as like, he's mirroring himself at that stage. So like, he's saying he's seen too many stare downs between the sun and the moon. Like, he's seen the days go by over and over again, and he's still like, your bones are held together by your nightmares and your fright. He's still so scared when he goes to sleep at night, and he's still struggling with the same things. Yeah,
he's expecting that he's always going to be the same way, and the fact that he says too many stare downs, he's acting like being alive for that many
one
days
of my
is a bad
favorite
thing.
lines in that song is the end can't come soon enough, but is it too soon? Which I think
oh my god,
really encapsulated that whole entire song in one sentence. Just like
it really does.
Yeah,
because he knows that it's not time yet, and it just goes to show it's kind of that like little bit of hope shining through, and it's that little bit of potential to change his perspective of death, which then does get expanded on. He starts out just saying, is it too soon?
yeah,
And then he gets to a point where he's saying that it is too soon, and that if you get to be old, then you've achieved something,
exactly.
you know? So it's kind of that realization that it won't always be the same way.
Yeah, and I think that really ties into the theme of hope that we were talking about earlier. Yeah, there's a lot of hope in these songs, and I think that's one of the reasons why Time to Say Goodbye feels like an odd 21 Pilots song in my eyes, just because it really lacks that silver lining and that hope.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, I just always viewed it like that way. Like, I love Time to Say Goodbye, and I think the way that he explains himself in that song and the lyrics are so beautiful and so heartbreaking to me.
Yeah.
But it really is missing that like 21 Pilots, like it's gonna be okay aspect.
I think the only other kind of ideas I had about growing up, not necessarily old age, but just getting to a different stage of your life, was in Stressed Out, when he says, used to dream of outer space, but now they're laughing at our face. So it's kind of leaving childhood. So not going from adulthood to being elderly, but going from childhood into being an adult. That's another element of growing up.
And then in Slow Town, he's an adult and all he wants is to go back and be a child.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when times were easier.
Yeah.
And you would just be living in a dream world. And that also begs the question of like,
also
the whole thing about him using dreams as a sanctuary.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Being asleep is easier than being awake.
Yeah. I mean, sleep can have so many connotations, and I think it's another one of those things. Like, a metaphor can be so many different things. So sleep is just one of those things, and dreaming is just one of those things that can be, you know, it depends on the context of the song and what Tyler wants it to be.
Yeah.
And I really like that about their songs.
Yeah. I don't really have anything else to say about the age and growing up thing.
Death. Yeah, why did you put the skeleton click symbol?
I just couldn't think of anything else to put there, so I thought it's like a skeleton,
Death.
so it can go there.
We're all going to die. If you're a click, you're going to die. I mean, that's true. That is true to all people everywhere. That's kind of comforting.
Yeah. Death, God, it's a massive, massive theme. Yeah. There's too much to say about it, to be honest.
And I feel like we've already talked about that a lot, because it really ties into everything.
There's the fear of death. I feel like we talked about the whole thing about the season of winter and the coldness being associated with death. We've gone over all that.
I mean, we haven't really, because I feel like something that we forgot to talk about is that the theory that you told me, that like, is not just a 21 Pilots thing, right? That a season represents like a cycle of your life, like a period of your life.
So we talked about it a bit in the last episode, though. But yeah, spring is when you're born. Yeah,
I think we talked about that by ourselves, or was it?
No, it was definitely in the episode.
Okay,
it was. So I don't think we need to go over it again, but we could just say that each season is supposed to be a stage of your life, and obviously winter's the end of the year. That's sort of when you're coming to the end. So that's why coldness is generally associated with death. And it is, because you get cold when you die. Like, your body goes cold. You're no longer going to have the warmth.
We talked about in songs how Tyler, when he talks about being cold, how that could represent that he feels like he's close to dying.
Yeah, exactly. And then in Dema, obviously, the main way that death is represented is through vialism and
Mm-hmm.
the glorified suicide that everyone's supposed to conform to.
Yeah, that's kind of the
I'm
goal.
trying to see if I have. Yeah, like in neon gravestones where they're suggesting an earlier grave is an optional way, and then Tyler literally just follows that saying no.
No.
He just doesn't agree. He knows that it's not an optional way because he's realized that throughout his own life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's what the bishops are preaching.
I mean, I think about so many lines like death inspires me, like a dog inspires a rabbit. So if you look at the dog and the rabbit story, we know that like Tyler and Blurry Face. Yeah, we can, like, there are so many things that we can say about it. That is just
And then
like,
I think one of the most depressing lines about that I interpret as death in the whole discography is we'll win, but not everyone will get out. Because if you look at that on the level of everyone going through their struggles,
definitely.
and if you consider suicide, not everyone is going to get out. Not everyone is fortunate enough that they realize in time
exactly
that it's going to get better.
Like the whole
And that's
the whole world of Dema is the outside is all graves, and
yeah, like not everyone has got out in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it takes a journey.
I think another song that really talks about death is Morph. Like the whole entire song.
I'm just a ghost.
Well, yeah. I think that I'm off to someone else, I'm just a ghost. I always took that as like talking about like the album creation process, which I think.
Do you know what that also makes me think of? It makes me think of how when he says ghost, if he's referring to his own consciousness and his own spirit within his body, when you think about how they can seize other characters and other people in Dema, he can morph into someone else if he can seize someone. So then does that mean that he exists as a ghost within his own body that can then go and possess other bodies?
I mean, literally, the morph visual that we saw in the Icy tour was him seizing Keon's. That was the morph visual. So I think that Tyler thinks about that as well.
Yeah. And then obviously the opening to Morph is very relatable. Yeah. Can't stop thinking about if and when I die. If and when are different cries. If is panic, and then when is about solemn. It
also ties into the direction theme that I'm just now realizing we haven't talked about yet, and it's in the presentation, right?
Yeah, it's 2 slides away.
But I feel like we won't have enough examples for that because we can just like mention it briefly that the whole directions thing is a huge I don't know, it's an interesting theme in their songs. We can think about
we can go over it a little bit, but
yeah.
We won't stick on it for too long.
I mean we can talk about a car torture death, which isn't the first example you'd think of, but and like he talks about and I began to envy the headlights driving south.
I have that one written down as well.
Yeah, he talks about that in what song is it? The Judge, where he's like, oh yeah, something about him not knowing the way.
I head out down a route. I think it's heading south.
I think it's heading south. That's right. I think it's heading south. Again, that same direction.
Yeah, which is interesting.
The whole east is up. The whole like up, down, and around. So we have
because if east is up, then south is east.
No, I definitely don't have that figured out yet. That's one of the things that I've been wanting to really look into because I'm not sure. I could theorize it right now, but I'm not sure. And like, something that's interesting is that Morph and Migraine, right? When he talks about above, under, or around it. Well, it's just all blurring in my mind right now. But in Migraine, he talks about up, down, and sideways. And in Morph, he says, for everyone to go up, like he's saying above, under, or around it. I'm pretty sure.
There's no above or under or around it.
Yeah, there's no above or under or around it. Thank you. So I feel like those two songs, right, talking about the same thing, the same directional. I really think that he has like a metaphor for each direction and what it means.
Yeah, I mean, in the hype, the song about the Banditos, about the fan base, he's saying, "I don't know which way I'm going, but I can hear
I
my
can
way
hear my way
around."
around. Yeah,
Which makes you wonder, like, about the voices and like the idea of sound being a communication between the Banditos.
right, because he can't see it necessarily, but he can hear it.
Yeah, he knows where he's supposed to go, and it links to like the communication of the Banditos, because a lot of the kind of directional elements and stuff are lyrics, like "East is up," "We're moving sideways," all that kind of stuff. It kind of makes you wonder, are they trying to tell each other something through the songs? Are they trying to, and then when they listen out for these directions, they hear them in the lyrics, so he can hear his way around.
It almost feels like they're kind of like code words, because obviously east is up is not east is not usually up, and like we're moving sideways, like he's saying keep sidewalk under your feet, which could be like a clever way of saying like don't get high, right? Because he's talking about synthetic highs.
Yeah.
All of these things that he's saying like indirectly.
Stay grounded. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even just the basic meaning of stay grounded, stay aware of your surroundings, make sure they can't like get to your head. Could be what he means when he says.
And that could also be because the bishops were present in the creation of that album, so he had to say things indirectly.
Yeah. When he says, "How'd you get the location?" in No Chances, I've always thought of that as him talking about the bishops working out where they are, or trying to work out what their plan is through all these little hints in the lyrics, or through finding Clancy's entries the website.
The thing though, in No Chances, I always think about it from like the bishops' point of view. So like they're saying it.
Yeah, actually, to be fair, that could make sense too. But I thought the way they said put together pieces, they say they sell the information in their terms of agreement. So like almost like the bishops have got a hold of putting like the pieces to put together to work out the location. But I don't think they do know the location. I think because they don't understand the meanings of, like you said, there'll be code words. I don't think the bishops know what those meanings are, or they've been led the wrong way.
You know what? It's almost as if because Tyler's writing the songs, and we know when we look at the big picture, it's Tyler. Like there are no characters. It's sorry to like burst your bubble if you're like, it's kind of like Santa. Sorry, like Nico is not real. No, but it's Tyler writing the songs, right? Yeah. And when we know that he has a connection to each bishop because he essentially created them, or he created them to visualize what's going on in his head. It's almost as if each one of these characters bleed through the song. So it doesn't have to be necessarily from a certain character's point of view, but they could still like.
I feel like you might as well have gone to the direction slide.
Oh, where is it?
It's 2 slides away. I don't know what one's first though.
Oh, community and solidarity. Did I have a visual for this? But I don't want to put the visuals on if they are sorry, I was reading the comments. I don't want to put the visual on if it's like laggy.
To be fair, do you have much to say about community and solidarity? I feel like we've gone over a lot.
Yeah, we've gone over it. I think that it's not necessary right now, but it is a really big thing that we should address at some point. We definitely are missing a lot of things, but we can't possibly go through everything.
No. We're going over what we think is important. That's what matters.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the community thing, obviously, My Blood, the hype, a lot of Trench tracks come down to that. The whole Banditos leading the rebellion thing.
Man. Yeah. Sorry.
So what slide are we doing now?
I was looking for the communal thing and I couldn't find the correct slide.
Sorry. That's all right. So what one do we want to go on to next?
Eyes, I think, is an important one.
Okay, yeah, we can do eyes.
I have a visual for that.
I think eyes is the last one.
All right.
Should we just go straight to that? Because we've talked about disguise. We already talked about disguise. We've talked about hope.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about the whole system and the submission.
Yeah.
So we can just go straight to eyes and then be done after that.
Yeah, and if
We'll
we
obviously
have,
go over stuff.
yeah, and
Yeah.
if we have anything to add, or yeah. I mean,
So obviously the thing with eyes,
is so interesting.
it really is. It is not like massively in a lot of song lyrics, but it's definitely mentioned enough times because
definitely.
eyes are like a window to the soul. Like that's like a phrase, isn't it? Like the eye is the window to the soul. So, the kind of idea that Dema is this world that exists in Tyler's imagination, behind his eyelids. His eyelids are islands of violence.
The one shot and shy away of like looking at Tyler's eyes. That I put in the visual, so you could see that in here, I think. But it is like it's so interesting, and it really like encapsulated like what you're saying. Like it is you're looking through his brain. And like the whole sleepers, the whole thing, the eye closing, the hiatus and everything, like it adds to that. That's like what we're saying right now is his brain.
Yeah. And they literally have a song called Glowing Eyes, and eyes glow when a person is being seized. And then there's obviously like the eyes of Trash and of Clifford on the covers of the albums, and they're yellow.
I feel like Glowing Eyes could be also like, how I said that voices and like shadows and stuff could represent the bishops before they were called bishops. So I feel like Glowing Eyes could be an example of that. Like he knows there's someone at the door. They call for help of this, I'm sure. But do I want to say goodbye to all the glowing eyes? Like all the voices and all the things that I know are bad for me, but are also comforting.
Because he's holding on to what he knows.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm
like
holding
in
on to what I
Clancy's
know,
first journal.
and what I know I must let go. But I would rather play a song for the eyes to sing along.
The eyes to sing along. Yeah, it's just like Clancy's first journal entry where was it his first one or his second one? But it's the one where he's left the city and he's talking about how he misses it because it's kind of like
he didn't leave the city in the first two. So probably like fourth one.
It's like a stagnant familiarity where it's something that he knows isn't good for him. It's something that he's known his whole life. It's like a stale concept being there, but it's familiar.
There's the whole aspect of home when he says, home, did I just call this place home? After all the endless beauty that I saw out there, am I now convincing myself that I'm actually better off within these confines?
Exactly. He's not sure where he should be. He's not sure what's the right thing to believe, where is the right place to be. But in Glowing Eyes, I guess he's definitely talking about that, because does he want to say goodbye to these glowing eyes? Does he want to make the change? And I'm looking at the visual right now, and Dan and Sally, they're so creepy looking.
I know.
Obviously, they are dead bodies rotting away, but they're being seized.
Yeah, it is interesting how the blue and the yellow are both in there.
Yeah, definitely. Makes you
blue, the red and the yellow. Oh my god, I'm so tired. The red and the yellow is what I meant, not the blue.
Yeah, because the red, what does the red mean? That's like
blue is also
the color of
in Sally's makeup, but no. Oh, the red.
Yeah, I mean,
red is kind of like blurry face, right? Like when blurry face is seizing Tyler, his eyes are red, but when Tyler is seizing Keon's, his eyes are yellow.
So if they're both red and yellow at the same time, does that mean there could be someone else trying to seize them at the same time?
I don't know. Maybe because Tyler is connected to Nico, they're like both kind of seizing Dan and Sally at the same time. That's another thing that's like it's such a big unanswered question. Like the connection between Tyler and each character in this story is something that I keep coming back to, because I feel like because he's essentially every character, but also each character is obviously different. What are the limitations in that universe?
Yeah, that's a good point. Because technically, if you said that Blurryface was seizing another character, so Blurryface seizing Dan and Sally, technically Tyler is all of those people in a sense.
Yeah.
At the same time, simultaneously.
Another question to ask is like, just like the line between Tyler and Nico is blurry. Like the line between this supposedly fake world and the real world also gets blurry as we go on, especially in the live stream experience.
Yeah, it does.
So it's also like it kind of comes back to the whole like dreaming aspect. Am I dreaming or is this real or not? You know?
Yeah.
So
am
like,
I alive or am I dreaming dead as well?
I would like to like find out what are the exact like boundaries between Dema and the real world and Tyler and other characters and Tyler and Josh. You know?
Yeah, it's a very foggy concept.
Yeah, but I feel
There's
like
so much
it's one that could explain a lot of things, and I feel like yeah,
I agree.
It could be where they're heading in the next era.
I also think it's interesting how Tyler's always got some sort of nose injury.
Oh, the scars? Gosh, the scars are a whole thing because I've had theories, and then I was like, no, and I'm still confused about the scars, and I feel like I shouldn't be. I feel like it should have been explained by now. And many people try to explain it.
One thing that I was just thinking about is the fact that in Jumpsuit, it was just like a little cut on his nose. And then in The Outside, it was like he had a full-on broken nose. Like you could see the outline of a broken nose.
I mean, in Heathens, literally Heathens, he has 3 scars on his nose. 3 scars.
So it's like he's always got. But yeah, I was just gonna say, like Dan and Sally. One thing that you notice about them is that they start out looking normal, and as throughout the period of them being seized, they start to look injured. Like there's cuts on their faces. And that's just an interesting thing is why are there cuts appearing on their faces and why is there a cut that appears on Tyler's face?
It's like almost like after he's been seized, maybe he gets that like mark.
Yeah, it's like almost, if you think about it, like all these wars and all these battles, any fights that he has with these other characters are going on inside his head. They're imaginary. They wouldn't leave any mark.
In Come My Lip, which I really think is a song about cycles, he talks about, though I am bruised, face of contusion.
Yeah.
Contusions. No, I'll keep moving. And like he talks about, I keep on going back even though it's me I abuse. I really think that song correlates to what we're saying right now.
It does.
Because like the way I picture it is like he keeps on hurting himself. He keeps on having cuts on his face and bruises, and he keeps going back through the cycle over and over again. It's almost as if every time he's gone through the cycle, he gets like that mark.
Yeah.
Like, if we're looking at the videos, like we have the Heavy Dirty Soul Jumpsuit, Nico and the Niners Levitate. That is a cycle that ends and begins. It has like an ending and a beginning, right? And we have all of the other ones that also correlate to that world of Trench. But like maybe we have like different cycles that he's just going through over and over again.
I definitely think that is a valid thing. Like I would have to agree with you there. I see the whole cut my lip cycle thing. I think we talked about that before.
I used to have a theory that's like Dema resets every single day. So like that doesn't mean that every single day is going to be the same. It's just that every single day is going to go back to this to the way it was. So like
had to see it on his face so he could see another day.
Right. That's interesting. That line is very interesting.
It is, because stealing someone from their fate implies...
I mean, the thing is about Taxicab, it feels like Taxicab is about someone who is really close to death, and he's being saved, right? There's the 2 people.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's the 3 people. And they're essentially like saving him.
Yeah. Okay. But they call it his fate as well, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Yeah, I feel like we should
we're kind
wrap up.
We're kind of going
point.
on a side tangent right now, but yeah.
But yeah, we've gone through most of the slides and we're at the end, and it's been like 2 hours and 40 minutes. So I feel like is there anything you wanted to add?
Gosh, I mean, we talked about so many things. I don't know really how to wrap it up. I guess the thing that I do want to mention, not necessarily about what we just talked about, but about the podcast itself, because me and Connie have so many ideas, and we're not really sure, how to like what should be our priorities, and like how to structure each episode. I mean, I'm not saying that we're like bad at it, because I know I keep saying that to Connie separately, not to you guys. But sorry, Connie. Like, I'm not trying to like bum you out. I'm not trying to say like we suck. We suck. It's so bad. I do say that, but like that's only because I'm insecure. What I'm going to say is that we have a lot to talk about, and I really think this has the potential to like we should really go in depth and God, I don't even know what I was saying. I'm just saying that I have hope for this podcast, and we have a lot to talk about. I have like things in mind that I already know that I want to talk about, and this is just us scratching the surface. I
mean, it's subject to change. It depends on what we plan. We've, only just done this episode, but the idea is to potentially talk about the Newport show, I think, at some point. Maybe next time. The Newport show. It might not be next time, but, just saying it might be.
I mean, I'm still very, very interested in the, like, TOP history aspect, because I know we kind of let go of that. But watching the old videos, I mean, I don't think this should be, like, a reaction type of thing. I definitely think that if we were to do some kind of reaction, it would be like separate to the podcast. I'm just now realizing.
Yeah.
But watching old videos, I think really, it's really important to like, and it does relate to the lore, but it's really important to just like see the band's beginning, and it really helps you connect with Tyler and understand him better. And Tyler and Josh, after Josh joined the band. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just rambling. I really love those old videos. That's all I'm trying to say. I really had so much fun just going through all of them.
Yeah, but anyway,
yeah.
I guess that's all we really have to talk about for this time, I guess. We can...
Yeah, it's only been 2 hours. I'm sorry, guys.
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours.
But yeah, I think the plan is Friday next week. I think we're going to try and do Fridays from now on.
Can we do Saturday?
Well, we'll have to talk about it, but it'll be next week, like end of the week. It won't be before Friday. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
We'll have to discuss it with Sophie.
Okay,
but yeah,
but before that, we're just going to take a brief intermission, and we'll be right back. You know what I'm gonna do. Just let it happen.
I know what you're gonna do.
Just let it happen.
I know what you're gonna do.
Let it happen.